For about 300 years, guns were, well, they were just awful. I mean, they were inaccurate, unreliable, and incredibly slow. So you've got to wonder, right? If they were so bad, how on earth did they end up conquering the entire world?
Yeah, let's just ask that question head on. Why did this clunky, pretty inefficient piece of technology manage to push out these elegant, deadly weapons that have been the kings of the battlefield for centuries?
Because the answer, it's probably not what you're thinking. It has almost nothing to do with better technology or more firepower. Nope. It's all about a massive shift in what we could call the mathematics of power. And it's a secret that doesn't just explain military history. It explains how huge disruptions happen, even right now, today.
Okay, so first things first, let's really get into just how terrible these early guns were. We have to completely bust this myth that they won just because they were a better weapon.
I mean, just look at the numbers here. It's kind of shocking. A longbowman could get off like 12 shots in the time it took a musketeer to fire just one. He was accurate from 4 times farther away. And, his bow didn't just stop working when it rained. By literally every important measure, the musket was a complete and utter failure.
And get this wasn't some big secret. The commanders back then knew it. It was written right there in their own military manuals. They openly admitted firearms were less effective than bows, and yet they still picked them. This is the real mystery, right? Why on earth would you choose to give your army a weapon you know is worse?
Okay, so the answer, it's not about the gun. Not at all. It's about the person holding the gun. And this is the real game changer.
Think about this. To train just one expert English longbowman, you're looking at 10 years, minimum. This was a lifelong commitment, something that often started when you were a kid. It was this constant, brutal process of building up incredible physical strength.
And you can actually see it in their skeletons today. It's wild. Archaeologists find these archers, and they've got these huge left arms, crazy overdeveloped shoulder blades, their spines are even warped. The weapon literally reshaped their bodies over a lifetime. So these guys, they weren't just soldiers, they were irreplaceable. They were the product of an entire culture, not something you could just whip up in a training camp.
Okay, now for the musket. How long do you think it took to train a musketeer? 2 weeks. You could grab pretty much any peasant off a farm, show him how to pour powder, jam a ball down the barrel, and point. That's it. In 14 days, you had a soldier.
And this chart right here, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? We're not talking about a small improvement. This is a complete demolition of the old way of doing things. You're going from a 520-week investment down to 2. The gun wasn't better, but the soldier, he was insanely cheaper and faster to make. And that right there, that's the real magic word, scalability. The single greatest thing about the musket was that it made individual skill basically pointless. It didn't matter if you were the strongest guy in the village or if you trained your whole life. The only thing that mattered was, could you make more of them? A lot more.
So this one thing, this idea of scalability, it turned warfare completely on its head. It wasn't just about a new gun. It was a totally new way to fight. Let's put this into perspective. At the famous Battle of Agincourt, back in 1415, England had a few thousand archers. But these guys were the result of a national, decades-long project. If that army was wiped out, you couldn't replace them for a generation. Now, flash forward to 1631. An army from Sweden could put tens of thousands of musketeers on the field, and if they lost half of them, they could replace them in a few months. It's a whole new ballgame.
So the math of war had changed forever. A nation's power wasn't tied to its culture of warriors anymore. It was all about how many men you could round up and how many guns your factories could churn out. War, it basically became an industrial process.
And here's what's really fascinating. This pattern, where a worse but way more scalable system just takes over, it's not a one-time thing. Once you see it with guns, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere.
Think about it. The Roman legions versus Celtic warriors. The individual Celt might have been a better fighter, but Rome could stamp out legionaries like they were on an assembly line. Or look at today, military drones. A drone is often slower and easier to shoot down than a fancy fighter jet, but you can build them cheap and you can train a pilot in months instead of years. It is the exact same logic.
So you can actually break this pattern down into 4 simple steps. Step 1, a new technology shows up and honestly, it kind of sucks. Step 2, its main trick is that you don't need to be an expert to use it. Step 3, because you don't need experts, you can scale it up like crazy.
And finally, step 4, the old, better way of doing things just becomes obsolete.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The story of why the gun won isn't really about the gun. It's about the end of the expert warrior.
For 300 years, the weapon itself was worse.
But the people in charge, they weren't just choosing a weapon. They were choosing a system. And a system that lets you build an army out of anyone, well, over time, that system is just impossible to beat.
So that leaves us with a really interesting question, doesn't it? Because this pattern, it didn't just stop in the 1700s. It's still happening. So take a look around today. What's a technology that seems kind of clunky, maybe even a step backward from what we have now, but its real power is that it's making some deep human expertise a little less important? Because whatever that is, that's probably where the next big revolution is hiding.